Hello, welcome. We are closing out day number one. Hopefully, you've already gotten a whole bunch of takeaways and tools for your tool belt. This is going to help add even more tools to that tool belt to help make you successful. So, this is goal setting and planning, and it's all about setting ourselves up for success moving into next year by setting proper goals today. So let's jump into it. But really, before we do, I got a thought-provoking question for everyone. I'm going to ask the question and just think about it, ponder on it for a moment, and then give me some of your answers. Have you ever worked for a company, whether it was here at Sunworks or some company before it, where you either had your own personal goals that you were assigned, that you like assigned yourself, or maybe the organization gave you some specific goals, whichever one, but ultimately those goals were not obtained. Has that ever happened to anyone before? Everyone, right? Like all of us have had a goal at some point in the past that we didn't achieve. All right. So why? Why were those goals not achieved? What prevented it? And ultimately, how can we overcome whatever those things are and achieve some high level results? So I've heard several things from several people. Let's like summarize them here for a second. I've heard people didn't have enough people to accomplish the goals, staffing basically, right? We didn't have enough resources, whether that was money, technology, what time even is a resource, right? Maybe we didn't have enough of one or multiple of those things. I also heard that the goals were maybe too lofty, too difficult, unachievable, unattainable, those kinds of things, right? And there's probably a wide range of even more that were reasonings behind why certain goals were obtained. But ultimately, everyone in this room, we are leaders, right? And we are here to lead our teams to success. And thankfully, we have the capability to set goals for our branches and for our teams. And we ultimately want to set them up for success. So we need to understand in the past when we didn't achieve goals, what were some of those pitfalls and those obstacles that prevented it from occurring? So we won't repeat those same things with our team and we set them up for success. Make sense? Got it? All right. The next slide is a Joeism, is what I like to call them. Maybe that's a bad term, but it's a Joeism. It's not from anywhere in Sunworks world at all. It's totally a Joe thing, and it's really derived from almost 3 decades of leadership and leading teams and achieving goals. And when I achieved them, what my team achieved them, what happened when I didn't or we didn't, what happened, and trying to learn from those in every single circumstance. And ultimately, kind of here's what I came up with. And that is, as a leader, not the person out there doing the work. All right. There's different answers for that. But as the leader, as the person directing the organization, directing a team to accomplish a team goal, when it comes to that, as the leader, there's really 2 things that we can influence directly, like us, 100% have full influenceability over them. And those things are the strategy, what we want to accomplish, and how we want to go about accomplishing it, what our goals are. Like we have, as a leader, an influence to determine what the goals are that we set for ourselves and for our teams, right? Everybody agree with that? Anyone not agree? Okay. And then secondarily, we also can influence how well, if any, we execute that strategy, how well we execute the accomplishment of the goals that are set. We can influence those. We can direct. We can provide feedback. We can give coaching. We can train and develop. We can hire if there's not enough resources, right? Like we have the influence ability to impact the execution of whatever strategy that we come up with. I know there's several people in the room with MBAs, so I'm really looking forward to hearing y'all's answer to this question. I did some research. This was about 15-ish years ago for a book that I was writing. And I reached out to and I ultimately interviewed a whole bunch. I want to say, if I remember right, it was 12 different people who all had an MBA from the Harvard Business School. And the ultimate goal of those short, like coffee interview type things with them that I did was I just really wanted to get some insight from them, being super highly educated. What did they study when they were in school? How much, if any, of those things that they studied were, actually directly correlatable to their day-to-day work? Um, and ultimately, what could I learn from them as a result of that? And so I asked them a bunch of questions, but a couple of those questions were around specifically business development, strategy, and execution. And the answer from those 12 individuals, and granted, I totally understand there are more people that have graduated from Harvard Business School with an MBA than the 12 people that I happened to interview. But of all 12, I asked them this question: how many classes or courses did you take that had something to do with business development or business strategy, goals and stuff? And I got a wide range of answers, but the overarching one was a lot of classes that they took were had something to do with creating a strategy, creating a business plan, and developing a business, growing it, marketing, et cetera, et cetera. Like there was a lot is the easiest way to frame it up. And then when I asked the question, well, how many actual specific classes did you have that were all about execution? Anybody want to guess what the answer was that I got from those 12 people? Yeah, none. There wasn't any. Like a few of the courses had a little bit to do with execution. Maybe they did like a group case study, or they did some sort of a homework or a project type assignment that they had to accomplish. But there was no specific course that the entire course was driven around execution. So with that in mind, even some of the most highly educated people out there have not received a ton. Maybe they received some, but not a ton of study or training or development in how to execute. And ultimately, hopefully everyone agrees with me, when it comes to creating a goal or executing a goal, executing is always a little bit more difficult than creating. We can come up with a goal in 30 seconds if we want to, and it's going to take us a whole lot longer than 30 seconds to execute whatever the goal is. It's always a little bit more difficult to execute than it is to create. So ultimately, when it comes to achieving results, there's things we cannot control for sure. And then there's things that we can control. And those things that we can't control is the strategy. What do we want to accomplish? How do we want to go about accomplishing it? And our execution of that strategy. I'm a big quote guy. There's going to be some quotes. I'm just going to tell you up front. There's going to be some quotes as we go through the next 3 weeks together. But here's one of my favorites. Steve Jobs, pretty sure everybody knows, but like co-founder, co-creator of Apple, super intelligent, business savvy guy that really took Apple to new heights before he unfortunately passed on. But in an interview, I don't remember the exact year. I want to say it was somewhere around 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. And in an interview, he said this quote, and the question was posed to him something similar to, how do you know if you're going about the wrong goals, or how do you know if you're not focusing on the right thing, something to that effect? And his answer was, I look myself in the mirror every morning and I ask myself, if today was the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer is no, for too many days in a row, I know that I need to change something. When you hear that or read that quote, what are some of the takeaways? What are some of the things that pop out to you? For me personally, what I hear or read when I see that is, there's some days in Steve Jobs' life he did some stuff he didn't want to do. He didn't want to do them, right? There were days that he had to do things he didn't want to do. But when that happened multiple days in a row, for too many days in a row, he needed to change something. He needed to alter his course. He needed to adjust. Maybe change his goal, maybe change his strategy, maybe change how he was executing the strategy. But it wasn't that he never did things he didn't want to do. There's always going to be things in life we have to do because we have to do them. But there's also things that we can do outside of that bring us passion, bring us exuberance and enthusiasm. And goals, setting a goal is an opportunity to set the stage for that? What's an enthusiastic, really vigorous thing that we can create for ourselves and our teams that's going to motivate us every single day, even on the tough days, keeps us motivated to move forward and try to accomplish that goal together. So again, this is a Joe-ism, okay? Not necessarily a Sunworks thing, but I will say that I have tried this across multiple organizations, from teams that were really small, like myself and one person, to teams that were very large, where I had just shy of 10,000 people on my team. I've tried the same exact approach, and vast majority, and when I say vast majority, I'm talking 90% or better of the time when these things were done, we accomplished whatever the goals were that we set for ourselves. Now, one of them was we set goals that allowed us the capability to do these things. But ultimately, when we did these things and we did them consistently, we achieved the goals. So I wanted to share this with you all. But before I do, I want to just frame it up a little bit and say none of this is going to be aha. I really doubt it. That these are going to be concepts or things that you've never heard of before or don't sound like common sense. Truthfully, they probably are common sense. But what's the one thing about common sense? It's not so common, right? So just because it's common sense doesn't mean it commonly occurs. You actually have to like almost force yourself into a routine to do these things. But if you do them, I would bet, and I'm not a betting guy, but I would place a bet that if these things were done and whatever goals you come up with for yourselves and your team later today, you'll get them. You'll not only achieve them, you'll blow them out of the water. So here it is. It's a 4-step process. Again, not designed to be something earth-shattering or something that you've never seen before, but do these 4 things and you can achieve goals consistently. The first one is that everyone on the goal, or excuse me, everyone on the team must know the goal. It's really, really hard to achieve anything unless you know what you're trying to achieve. And so however large your team is, every person's got to know what the goal is, what the team is attempting to accomplish. Putting it in an analogy for a minute, anybody a sports fan in the room? Yeah, okay. We're kind of in the middle of the big sport going on right now is football, right? When a football team takes the field, I'm fairly confident everyone on that team knows what the goal is, to win the game, right? And they got to do certain things in order to win the game, but everybody on the team probably knows that that's the goal. The score of our team's got to be more than the score of the other team by the time that the clock runs out, right? Like, that's not earth-shattering. But how many times in the regular business world do we send our teams out to go play a game, to go do their thing, to go do whatever they're supposed to do today, without understanding what success looks like that day? How often do we do that? I've done it plenty of times in the past. I'll be the first one to throw myself on the sword, right? I call that focus on the ferociously important. And the reason I say that is ferocious. When I think of ferocious, I think of like a lion attacking prey. That's the vision I get in my head when I hear the word ferocious. Maybe your vision is slightly different, but with mine, a lion going after a prey, he knows what the goal is. The goal is to get the prey so that he can eat, right? But he's going after it with every ounce of energy, vigor, enthusiasm, everything he possibly can muster at that moment in time to go after it. So if you pick a goal, make it be something you can have that same level of ferociousness towards. So I call it ferociously important goal, or to put an acronym on it, because we love acronyms, right? But to put an acronym on it, FIG, F-I-G, ferociously important goal. Second step is that everyone on the team's got to know what they need to do to help the team accomplish the goal. Like, everyone on your team probably plays a slightly different role. Not everyone does exactly the same thing. Even one crew leader to the next crew leader may do a very similar task, but they're doing it for disparate customers. And different customers have different expectations, and therefore they have to do things slightly different than the other crew leader to accomplish success. So everyone on the team's got to know what it is that they personally have to do to help the team win. That's the second step. And that's acting on lead measures. Lead measures is not a metric or a term that Joe created. Like, lead measures have been around forever. You know, a lead measure is something that you do in order to make accomplishment towards your goal. And you know, more often than not, if you positively impact a lead measure or a lead indicator, you are making progress towards the goal. It's a leading metric, right? So that's the second step, okay? Act on your lead indicators. The third one is everyone on the team has got to know at any moment how they're doing towards the goal. I just mentioned football a little bit ago. Football team takes the field, they're playing against another team, the game's going on. How hard would it be for anyone on that football team to figure out what the score was at that moment if they didn't already know what it was? Fairly easy, right? There's a scoreboard. They just look up. And that scoreboard that they look at can tell them pretty darn quickly if their team is winning or if their team is losing. So we have to be able to give that same thing to our team. They've got to know, are they winning? And is the overall larger team winning? So that they know if they're not, like, we got to do something different. We got to give them a score, though, so they know if they're winning or losing. Does that make sense? And it's got to be captivating. Like, you look at a football scoreboard, if you're a football player on that team, like, it's captivating. The score is the biggest thing you can see on that scoreboard. It like jumps out at you. It's captivating. You know exactly what the score is and exactly how much time is left in the game really easily, really quickly, because it's that captivating. If we're going to do it, we're going to keep score for our team, we've got to do it in a very captivating manner. And the last one, the most important, but also, truthfully, probably the most difficult. The first three you can do without a ton of effort. Like, you can create a goal and make sure everybody knows what the goal is. Like, you can have a meeting at your safety thing and go, hey, team, we're going after X, and we're going to do it by Friday or whatever. Like, that's not hard to communicate what the goal is to everybody. You could even go so far, a step further, complete step number 2 without a ton of difficulty. You could pass on goals to your general manager, who passes on to your area managers, who passes on to crew leads, specifically what each of those crews are supposed to be doing to help the team succeed in the goal that you set for them at the meeting. That might take a slightly longer amount of time, but not a ton of effort. Fairly short conversation individually with each of those people, and they'll know what they need to be doing, right? Not super hard. You can even come up with a way to keep score consistently and stick it on your whatever, your break room, your yard, like saying we're winning or we're losing, green, red, yellow, a number, it doesn't matter, like however you want to score it. You can do those things without a ton of effort. The next one, it does require a little bit of effort. And it requires a little bit of effort because it requires consistency. And ultimately, consistency is the most important thing of this part. Because if you only do it every once in a while, it does not have the same impact. But if you do it consistently, the impact on it is humongous. So here's what it is. Everyone on the team has got to have the ability to alter their actions or their behaviors throughout the course of the journey of accomplishing the goal. I call that creating a tempo of responsibility. I hear the word tempo, I'm thinking of like music. Music has a tempo, right? Like, there's a beat to it. And that beat is always the same. Whatever the beats per minute is on a song, it doesn't change in the middle of the song. The beats per minute is the same from the beginning of the song to the end of the song. Now, one song to a different song might have a slightly different beats per minute, but within the framework of one song, the beats per minute is consistent. So it has that rhythm, it has that tempo. Okay? And what this is fairly simplistic, but you give everybody the opportunity in that tempo, whatever rhythm you decide, for them to be able to look at their scoreboard, know if we're winning or losing, and if we are losing, have the capability, the ability, and really truthfully motivation to be able to alter their actions or their behaviors before the game's over, before the song ends, to accomplish the goal. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions on that? Here's what I believe personally. I think there's some people in this room right now that are kind of going, yeah, that's duh, Joe. Like, I knew that. I knew my team needed to know what the goal was. I knew they needed to know what they need to do. I know I got to tell them if they're winning or they're losing. And if we're losing, I got to tell them what to do different. Like, duh, I knew that. You didn't have to tell me that. Why did you just spend 5 minutes telling me the stuff that I already knew? I'm going to go out on a limb here. And I'm going to say while I've been talking over the last 5 minutes, your mind has probably wandered a little bit to something work related. Oh, what about that email? I missed a phone call. I'm supposed to have that meeting next Friday. I got to do my performance review of so and so. I got this, CapEx thing I got to get sent in, so I need to get my proposal back from whatever company on that truck that I got to get replaced. Like something has popped in your head, business related, in the last 5 minutes while Joe's talking. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's true. Whatever that was, there's a term for it, or at least Joe has a term for it. And in my opinion, it's the reason why execution is so difficult for people out there. When you really sit back and study how many companies, teams are successful consistently, and the answer to that is not very many. Like there's absolutely some companies and some teams out there that consistently win. But if you look at all the teams, all the companies out there, there's a very small percentage of them that win. So if everybody knows these four things, duh, Joe, I'm rolling my eyes right now because I already knew I needed to do these four things. Well, if that's true, if everybody knew it, why isn't everybody doing it? Here's my belief. Here's the lie behind that, in my opinion. And that is that there is something that creates the difficulty for execution. So if you peel back every layer, I thought I started with a thought-provoking question. What are some goals that we didn't accomplish? Why didn't we accomplish them? Like if we take those things and we did like the 5 whys exercise, we didn't have enough resources, and we do the 5 why exercise. Well, why didn't you have enough resources? Whatever your answer was, we asked why to that. Whatever your answer was, we asked why to that. We peel it all the way back, and we do that for any and every reason that a goal may not have been accomplished. More often than not, it will fall down to one thing. Anybody want to guess what that one thing is as to why execution is so difficult? Joe's answer, at least, is what's called the whirlwind. The whirlwind is all the energy, attention, tasks, things that need to be done in order to keep the business where it already is. If a customer emails you or calls you, you got to respond to that customer. If you don't, your business gets worse. Is that fair to say? Yeah. Okay. If we don't have a safety meeting consistently all the time and somebody gets hurt, like that's going to make our business more difficult to be successful. Is that fair to say? If we lose somebody on our team, they quit for whatever reason, and we don't replace them at some point in the near future, our business is probably going to go backwards. Is that a fair statement? Yeah. Like those things that we have to do to keep the business what it already is, whatever that list is, and everybody's list may be slightly different, but whatever is on that list, those things, put them in one bucket. I call them the whirlwind. You call them whatever you want. I just call them the whirlwind. But if you think about it this way, if you never had additional goals outside of the whirlwind, outside of those tasks, hiring somebody to replace somebody that quit, having a safety meeting to make sure that people are doing safe stuff, respond to customers when they reach out to you. If that's all we ever did, would you be busy? Yeah, okay. Would you be a little bit busy, or would you be a lot busy? Probably a lot busy, right? So understanding what is in your whirlwind, what those tasks are that keep your business where they already are, is super important. It is equally important to understand that that can't be all that we do. Even though that'll keep us busy to do those things, that can't be all that we do. So we have to first acknowledge the whirlwind. And at any given moment, on any given day, your whirlwind could be going bananas crazy. 100 miles an hour, knocking, y'all mind if I cuss? Y'all mind? 100 miles an hour, knocking shit over. Like there are days the whirlwind goes crazy. 17 customers has reached out to you. 15 people didn't show up for their shift today. 4 extra people quit. You got an inspector that walks in the office. You got bills that are due. You got this that needs to be accomplished. This email that's got to be responded to. Like, there are days when the whirlwind takes over. Okay, gotta acknowledge it. And I will be the first to admit, and I'm going to speak on behalf of Nate, Ben, everybody else. Hopefully they're cool with it. But we have our own whirlwind, and there are days our whirlwind is going crazy too. So we're right there with you. We got a whirlwind also. With that same acknowledgement, we also have to acknowledge one other thing. That if all we ever do are those things, go back to the Steve Jobs quote. If all we ever do is the things inside of our whirlwind, the things that don't really give us passion, but we do have to do them because it keeps our business where it's already at. If that's all we ever do, we're going to be in the exact same place from a goal accomplishment perspective. Tomorrow as we were today, next week as we were this week, next year as we were this year, you can keep going, right? If that's all we ever do is keep the business where it's already at, let our whirlwind take over, we never really move the business forward. So in order to do so, we cannot ignore the whirlwind. Again, those are things that we have to do, things we have to do to keep the business where it's already at. We can't ignore it. We can't stop calling back customers when they call us. We can't stop having safety meetings. We can't stop doing performance reviews. Like, we can't stop any of those things. We can't ignore the whirlwind, but we do have to have some goals in order for us to move forward. But the trick is not executing a goal. I'm pretty confident if Nate stood up here at the front of the class and said, hey guys, next week, don't worry about doing a safety meeting. Don't worry about being on any calls. Don't worry about returning any phone calls to any customers. Don't worry about doing anything. All I want you to do, this is it. That's all I want you to do all week long. You got all of next week to do it, and it's all I want you to do. Ignore everything else. All I want you to do is get me the budgets for 2024. That's it. I'm like 1,000% confident everybody in this room could do that. So the trick is not executing a goal. Everybody in this room can execute a goal. The trick is executing a goal in the midst of the whirlwind going on. That's the trick. So that sets the stage a little bit for our goal setting session today. Really short video clip on goal setting, and then we're going to jump into the workshop. Okay, here we go. All right. So goals should be set with a long runway. And that's really what this workshop is all about, is setting goals out. We are going to begin working on our 2024 one-page plan for your branch. So a year long, and really we're going to take it even further than that and go 5 years out. Super long runway of goal accomplishment. Then when we do that, over the beginning in the portions of this workshop, but into some other workshops we're going to do together as we go through the next few weeks, we're going to begin to break those down into actionable, measurable steps that either we can perform ourselves or we can assign and delegate to our team, that are shorter sprint type races, that if we win those races, we win those games, set ourselves up to achieve our long-term goals that we set today. Okay, so let's get into it. So for today's workshop, here's what we want. We want to do. We want to overview what goal setting looks like. It's going to take us about 10 minutes. We're going to do some 5-year intentions. We're going to forecast out 5 years out, where do we want our branch to be? Then we're going to scale backwards a little bit and just look at next year and next year only. We're going to do some breakout sessions so you can get some peer-to-peer coaching and feedback from other people in the room to help you really navigate and make sure the goals that you're setting are accomplishable. Then we're going to move in and scale those back just a little bit into what do we want to accomplish during the first quarter of next year, and set our stage for great things to happen in 2024. So to start it off, everybody in your workbooks, you should have a blank sheet of paper. It's a blank form, looks very, very similar to this. It's a one-page plan blank document, and there should be 3 columns on it. So just to frame this up, the far left-hand column is our 5-year intentions. So 5 years out. Then we have our 1 year. So next year it says 23, but it's 2024. And then Q1. And in both of those, there's kind of 2 rows. The top row is your professional stuff. What do we want to accomplish at your branch within each of those time frames? And then at the bottom row of each of those, you have your personal. So what are the same thing from a personal perspective that you want to do to help yourself grow? Okay. Every branch has a one-page plan. So does Sunworks. Here's the Sunworks one. I purposely took this backwards from the beginning of the year because it was our beginning of the year one-page plan. But you can see it follows the very same framework. We have a 5-year vision. 5 years out from the beginning of this year is 27. What were the things that we want to accomplish within that 5 year? Then we look at 1 year and we have our kind of big rocks and our larger goals to accomplish over the year of 2023. And we go through the list, but we've accomplished almost all of those. And then for the first quarter of this past year, what were the things that we wanted to do to set ourselves up to achieve those 1 year goals? Okay, makes sense? So we set goals because 80% or more of the workers in the US report that they have low engagement, that their work is like being on a treadmill. They just show up and they do the same thing every day in this kind of endless cycle, and they don't really have a shared purpose. Or if they do, they have a limited or little understanding of what those company goals are and how their efforts, what they do every day, support the goals of the companies. And we want to make sure that we checkbox those things. And we don't want our team being on a treadmill feeling like they're not doing anything that really helps the team accomplish. These will help us to be more intentional and proactive, giving a sense of ownership to everyone on our team. Because ultimately, without communication, with communication, goals will help provide that. We want them to be big, aspirational, stretch goals. That's our path of progress. Here's a few quotes. Again, I'm a quotes guy. Make no little plans, but they have no magic to stir up men's blood and probably themselves will not be realized. Your playing small does not serve the world. And lastly, until one is committed, there is always hesitancy, the chance to draw back, and always ineffectiveness. The moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things can occur to help one that would have never otherwise occurred. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it, so begin it now. And we're going to begin it now. So we're going to start 5 years out. Okay. So fast forward in your brain and use this blank one-page plan template inside of your workbook to start kind of jotting things down. All right, it's blank on purpose. Like you can write some stuff out, scratch it out, replace it. You can spell wrong. You can change it later on the computer. We're doing it the old school, pencil or pen and paper on purpose. There's a reason for it. Promise. Okay, so what we want you to do, I'm going to give you all 10 minutes each to, in your own brains, start thinking through these things, all right? But the things that we want you to think through in that 10-minute time period and begin jotting down are, what will your function, the leader of your branch, look like 5 years from now when your company is at least double the revenue? We talked about our 5-year goals, or it's a minimum double our revenue, right? So 5 years out, at a minimum, your branch is doing double the revenue it's doing today. What does your function look like? It may be very similar, or it may change slightly. Use that blank sheet of paper to begin jotting down some of this. Through the lens of this exercise, we do want you to keep the lens of you are in the same role 5 years out. Now, that may change. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball to say if your function is going to slightly differentiate 5 years from now. But for the purpose of this exercise, look at it through the lens as if you are. You're an operating company president today for X branch. 5 years from today, you are still the operating company president for the same branch, all right, as you go through the answers to these questions. So the questions are, who is your customer? And how will their number of customers and the needs of the customers change over that 5-year time period? In 5 years, what's going well, what's not going well? What are ways that you can improve to get better? Speed, efficiency, quality, profitability, capabilities, new services. What are some things we could do differently to improve? What level of growth is implied for that function? Like, how many more transactions are we going to need to have? How many more team members or managers are we going to need? Is there new systems we need to put in place? Physical space, like if we double our revenue, does your current yard give you the capability to do that? Or, is there a potential need for a secondary silo type yard somewhere? And from your personal developmental perspective, what do you want to grow on individually in that same 5-year time frame? Is there leadership growth, relationship development, some skill you want to develop and grow in? And with all of that change, what would it mean to you? How would your role change? How would you need it to change? So we're going to give you 10 minutes. Start thinking through and jotting down some stuff in your blank sheet of paper. Okay? 10 minutes. All right, 10 minutes, guys. I'm not going to ask you to read what they are. This was the brainstorming session on purpose. It was designed to be just a beginning point, starting point for the race. So good goals, as we mentioned a moment ago, should really fall into a few different things. Number one, they should be aspirational. If they're easy to achieve, they're not stretchy enough. Make them more stretchy. They should be inside of your control. They should be things that you can directly influence. There should be a limited number of them. So we want to isolate, narrow our focus down to those few key initiatives that we want to achieve, because we have to remember that we're going to have the whirlwind. Remember the whirlwind we talked about a little bit ago? The whirlwind's still going to happen. There's still going to be things that you have to do to keep the business where it already is, and we cannot ignore those things. So we're not going to have a ton of extra time. And so with the not ton of extra time that we have, we can't try to be going after 50 different things. We'll never accomplish any of them. But if we narrow it down, we limit our focus, we do have the capability to accomplish our goals within the whirlwind. They should also be specific and measurable. They should be things that's pretty easy to determine if you're winning or you're losing. Okay. So here's some examples. Now that you've had a brainstorming session on what those look like, it's time to start formulating those into tangible 5-year initiatives or goals. Okay. So here's some examples. Attract and retain a team of talented employees in all management and leadership roles. I'm going to ask the question, is that smart and measurable? or excuse me, does that meet the SMART acronym, specific and measurable? No, right? It's not very specific and it's not measurable. We need some numbers in there, like how many team members do we need, so that we get a little bit more specific and we give us the capability to measure it. The next one, provide a safe and healthy workplace for all employees from all job sites. But that, by the way, I copied and pasted these from some branches, one-page plans from 2023. I didn't make these up or anything. Okay, these came from branches, one-page plans. But I'm not putting the names up there because I want to protect the innocent, but I also want to use them as an opportunity for us to learn and grow together of what goals should look like. So is provide a safe and healthy workspace for all employees at all job sites SMART? Is it specific? Is it measurable? No. Like, what does that mean? That sounds great if you're accomplishing it, but like, how do you know if you're accomplishing it or not? You get a little bit more specific. How about this one? Double revenue from 5 million to 10 million while increasing operating profit from 1 million to 2 million. Is that one SMART? Yeah, it is, right? So that third one is a really good example. The first two, not so much. So take your thoughts that you jotted down in the previous 10-minute exercise and start coming up with SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitivity. Time sensitivity is already included because we're talking about 5 years. So the time part's already a checkbox. You just have to worry about the rest of the. Come up with at least 3, even if they're not perfect yet. Like, take what you wrote down a minute ago and jot down and start working towards 3. You can always add to it later. You can always adjust wording later, but start with creating 3 5-year intentional SMART goals for your branch and 1 personal goal for yourself over the next 5 years. Going to give you another 10 minutes to start taking some of those initial thoughts and ideas that you had and come up with 3 5-year professional and 1 5-year personal goal. All right. Now that we've had that minute and you've got 10 minutes and you've got your 3 professional, 1 personal goal, let's keep moving in. Now we're going to scale backwards a little bit. Now we're going to talk specifically 1 year out. So at the end of 2024, looking through the lens of your 5-year goals, what do we need to do? What do we need to achieve in 2024 that will move you confidently towards your 5-year goals? Again, we want to be very specific. As the time frame gets closer, goals should be much more measurable and concrete. You got to know if you're winning or losing your game, because if you're losing, you need to be able to adjust, right? So identify 1 to 2 annual goals that support your 5-year strategic initiative, okay? So here's some examples. These are, again, copy-paste jobs from other branches, one-page plans. So the professional 1-year goal that was attributed to the first 5-year one, 5-year professional goal was attract and retain a talented and motivated team of employees in all management and leadership roles. The 1-year goal that was next to that was an NPS satisfaction score increasing from 35% to 50, or by 35%, from 55 to 80% overall. Is that SMART? It is, right? So they didn't have a SMART 5-year goal, but they did at least have a SMART 1-year goal. And their belief was if they did that, they would be in a better position to achieve their 5-year goals, right? So the next one, the professional 5-year was provide a safe and healthy workplace for all employees at job sites. We kind of said that was not so smart, right? It was missing some of the acronyms. The 1-year goal next to that one was 0 preventable accidents or incidents and safety violations through quarterly audits. Is that smart? Yeah, much more smart than the 5-year one, right? So much better for sure. And let's look at the last one. Double revenue from 5 million to 10 million, increase operating profit from 1 to 2 million. The 1-year goal was increase the AM portfolio through 50% enhancement pull through. That's smart. Yeah, pretty dang close, right? All right. So this particular one, we're going to slightly change. The last couple, we did 10-minute kind of self-reflection stuff where you just wrote things down and were thinking through them a little bit, that kind of thing. We're going to now break out into groups of 3. And here's the framework for this breakout session. Take your original ideas, the things that you jotted down in that first 10 minutes. Then the second little brainstorm session that you had, where you started coming up with some 5-year goals and scaling back a little bit. What are the 1-year goals? What do you want to do in 2024 that'll set you up for success to achieve 5-year goals? But we want you to work with your peers. We're going to call you triads. Okay, your 3-person team. Work through it together. So each person should share what their 5-year intention is. You can only pick one. That's fine. I know you wrote down 3, but pick one, the one you feel best about, and what the associated 2024 goal is for that 5-year intention. Everyone on the team, all 3 of you, should take a turn. Okay, roughly 5 minutes each. So it's going to take roughly 15 minutes to do that. And then the remainder of the time, because we're going to give you 30 minutes total, so you have an additional 15 minutes after that. The remaining time, ask questions, talk about it, discuss, bounce ideas off of each other. I have a feeling many of you in the room are challenged with very similar stuff, whether it's staffing, execution, safety, whatever. I'm pretty sure you're not the only one in the room dealing with those same challenges or setting the same goals. And if you bounce some ideas off of each other, I bet you can pick up some tidbits from one another. So we're going to give you 30 minutes total. First 15 minutes or so, take turns sharing your 5-year intention and your associated 2024 goal. Rest of the time, it's more of a strategy session, open dialogue, ask questions, discuss, and really get down to some key objectives for 2024. Got it? Sound good? All right. 30 minutes. Starts now. All right, team. Now we had our 30-minute breakout session. Everybody should have your 3 5-year goals for professional, your 1 5-year goal for personal. At a minimum, you should have taken one of those 5-year intentions and come up with some goals for 2024 for them. So we're going to really get specific. What are specific actions, quarterly actions now? So we're going to take it down another notch. We're going to go to the far right-hand column now of your sheet and get down to real bare bones specific actions, things that you're going to do in the first 3 months of the year, January, February, and March, that is going to put you in a position to achieve your 1-year goal, whatever it was that you just came up with for your 1 year. What are you going to do in the first quarter to set the stage for success? One key note, you don't have to work on every single goal every single quarter. Like, depending upon the goals, sometimes there might have to be a break where you're focused on 1, 2, 3, 4 of the goals that are in your 5-year or your 1-year plans, and then you pick one of the other ones up the next quarter or something. So it doesn't have to be 100% correlatable, but there absolutely should be some action, some things you're very specifically going to be doing in the first quarter to accomplish and set your team up for success to get it. So here's some examples using the same ones that we've been talking through this whole time, right? So the very first one we came up with was all about employee satisfaction and retaining talented, motivated team members. We go back to that person's, that branch's 1-page plan. Their Q1 action was to complete an NPS survey and review the results, creating an action plan to implement for quarter 2. Is that smart? To meet the specific and measurable? Yeah, I mean, it kind of does. Get it done, review it, come up with an action plan. You could probably get a little bit more specific around like how, like who, who's going to review it, when, maybe a little bit. So it can maybe get a tad bit more specific, but it's pretty dang close. The next one was a safety and healthy workplace with 0 preventable accidents or incidents. That one was to implement the safety program through the safety committee and have the safety committee meet once. It's pretty smart and measurable, right? Pretty good one. Okay. And then the last one, doubling the revenue and doubling the operating profit by having 50% enhancement pull through at the AM level. In order to do that was to complete the AM enhancement workshops, the sales skills development, have each AM have ferociously important goals for enhancements that are consistently being achieved. And that's pretty smart, right? We have an action, the workshop, and then we have the capability of following up on those actions through the goals that are being set by the AMs. So that was pretty decent as well, right? Okay. So again, we're going to do roughly the same thing. Break back into the same 3-person teams you did a little bit ago. And now we're going to scale it down. So each person take a turn. Your 5-year intention. You've already told it to the guys once, so you should just be able to summarize it pretty quickly. The associated 2024 goal, again, you helped each other create that one. So hopefully that one's pretty darn close and you don't have to spend a whole lot of time explaining it. But what is your associated Q1 goal or action that's going to help you achieve your 1-year goal? And when you achieve your 1 year, it's going to help you achieve your 5. Same concept. Everybody take a turn, roughly 5 minutes or so each. So it's going to take 15 minutes. And then with the remaining time, because we're going to give you the same 30-minute window, use it for overall brainstorming strategy suggestions, to ask questions, discuss, and learn from each other. Sound good? All right. 30 minutes starts now. Okay. All right, everybody, let's come back in. Let's start to kind of review, recap. By no means are we expecting you to have your 1-page plan completely and utterly done by the end of the day today. Okay. However, we are going to work together through multiple workshops during this training course to help you do it and help you get there. So the 2024 begins and you got a 1-page plan ready to go execute. High level, we set goals in 3 different bars. Annually, where we review or update our 5-year strategic goals, create goals for the upcoming year, and create actions for the next quarter. Then we look at it quarterly, where we review the progress of the previous quarter and progress towards annual goals, and we create actions for the next quarter. And then it should also be reviewed weekly with your key stakeholders, your managers, your leaders of the business, your GMs, your AMs, weekly having some kind of progress strategy type session. It doesn't have to be an entire day. It can be 30 minutes or however long you need, right? To weekly review and have that step 4 that we talked about, the ability to alter actions or behaviors if we're not winning the game. That should be done weekly. Okay. So some next steps is, first one, schedule 1 hour with yourself sometime in the next couple of weeks before you come back to week 2's training session, which is 2 weeks from now. Schedule an hour with yourself somewhere in there. It's up to you. Everybody's schedule is different, but schedule 1 hour with yourself. Put it on the calendar so that nobody takes that hour from you. And the goal being to refine and draft up your goals within that 5-year, the 1 year, and Q1. Set up a time with a mentor. That mentor could be somebody in your 3-person team that you did today. It could be with a mentor, other company president that you've had the opportunity to interact with and learn from. Maybe reach out to him or her. It could also be with myself, Ben, Nate. Like, we're here as well. If you want some, outside perspectives and insights. And as you go through those, modify and edit them, and ultimately look to finalize them over the next couple of weeks. And then last one, schedule a weekly meeting with yourself and yourself only to review quarterly actions, manage your calendar, set your weekly goals. This screenshot was, obviously a highlight of when that was. It was like 8 a.m. on a Monday morning. It does not have to be 8 a.m. on Monday. It's whenever you can fill an hour in with whatever's going on inside of your whirlwind. Pick an hour, throw it on the calendar so nobody takes that time, and you're always giving yourself a time slot so that you yourself can do step number 4. And if there are some different actions or behaviors you need to be doing to help your team succeed, you have the capability to have reflection time. Okay. All right, so we're closing it out. Joe's a quote guy. We started off with some quotes, Steve Jobs and others, right? Here's a quote from Abraham Lincoln. He's got plenty of quotes out there, but this was one of my favorites. If I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'm going to spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe. If you've ever read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, you know sharpening the saw. It's basically the same concept, right? But you got to have time for yourself to develop your own skills, to keep your saw or your axe, whatever, your tool, as sharp as it possibly can be. So that when it gets swung, it is being swung and it's going to be its most effective. You got to have that time. This is really the kind of closing out moment of day number 1 for us. And I hope you've gotten a couple of tools for your tool belts. And I love using this analogy. You can go to Home Depot or Lowe's or any home improvement store, really, and buy hammers. Like there's hammers that range large in price. And you go up in price, you get a slightly higher quality hammer. And I want to say last time I was at like a Home Depot that there was like a $65, $70 hammer. And then there was like a $5 hammer. I don't have to show a picture of what they look like. You could probably guess the $65 hammer was a little bit better than the $5 hammer, right? But here's the big piece of that. I could spend $65 on a really, really good quality hammer. But if I stick it in my toolbox and I never pull it out and I never use it, it's a waste of $65. Doesn't matter how good a quality it was. I don't use it. It was all for naught. So if you did get, and I really do hope you got some tools today, and I'm going to do my best to give you some more over the remainder of these training workshops, but understand that's exactly what they are. They're tools that's going to get put in your toolbox or your tool belt. It's up to you to pull the tools out and use the tools. Because if you don't, you can spend $65 on a hammer and waste $65. Or you can pull the hammer out and you can use the hammer when it's time to hammer in some nails and achieve some